symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling? We'll find out today, but of course, in order to do that, we got to welcome in the master of ceremonies himself, Mr. Chris Hero. Chris, what's going on, man? How are you?
On Rizzle, I'm very well. I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit sad because for the first time since my freshman year of high school, the Duke Blue Devils have missed the NCAA tournament. Oh, man.
What happened?
Well, they just had a very tumultuous season. They had a lot of freshmen, a lot of young guys. It's been a weird era for college sports with trying to get people ready for the season. And there were several games in the first half of the season that Duke had to postpone or just basically void because of other teams not following the right protocols, and they didn't want to put themselves in a situation. So you're getting to the end of the season and they are like 6, 7, 8 games less than some of these top teams. And just when you have that many young guys on a squad trying to find your identity as a team, it's tough. And what an argument could be made for a guy who was their best player, this guy, Jalen Johnson, with a couple games left in the season, he decided to opt out and just start focusing on the NBA draft. He's a likely lottery pick. And, that's a blow to the team as well. They actually started playing really well when Jalen left and they looked like they had figured something out, but it's just tough. I have loved Duke since I was 10, 11, 12 years old. I followed them every year. Just kid from Dayton, Ohio, liking a team from North Carolina. How bizarre, right? But
no, I get it. I mean,
they were the shit, man. Bobby Hurley, Grant Hill, Christian Laettner. Those were my guys growing up, and I followed the team ever since. Not every season's been a great one. But now it's, with last year's tournament being canceled and this year not making it and declining the NIT invitation. It's very weird to be this late in March and not have any games to look forward to on that level.
Well, we're looking forward to talking about next level wrestling discussion because that's what we do here on the show. And we decided to dust off the old Q&As because we got some really great feedback the last time we sort of bounced all over the place and let you guys be in control. We want to go ahead and load up for the next time we do this too. So if you've got a question for us, you can ask the question on Twitter. Tell them where to do that, Chris.
You can hit me up either at Chris Hero or at Can Chris Hero. You can use the hashtag Ask Hero Anything. I also did a segment for people following along. Hashtag Ask Wrestling Genius. Those questions are a little more about the technique and history of pro wrestling as opposed to me and my career. But if you throw me a question in this Ask Hero Anything and it looks like it's got potential for the Wrestling Genius, I'll throw it in there as well. So just send us your questions, tweet us, let us know. We'd love to have some more subjects to discuss. It's always fun to see what people come up with.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into it. Brian wants to know, can you share your first memories of wrestling in Canada? I believe the first time was for IWS in Montreal.
The International Wrestling Syndicate. Have you heard of IWS, Conrad? Are you familiar?
I have. That's Sami Zayn and Kevin Steen.
You got it. Sami Zayn, Kevin Steen, the Dark Order now, the Super Smash Brothers. They were at one time, Player Uno and Dos. A team called 3.0 that works a lot in 205 Live right now. You had some crazy characters like Frankie the Mobster, Kenny the Bastard. You had one of the many Beef Wellingtons. They were a red hot independent wrestling company in the mid 2000s. They had sent a couple guys to CZW. And they ended up having a barn burner of a match. That would have been Kevin Steen, El Generico, XS 69, Sexy Eddie. And they just, because they were from Montreal and they were kind of in their little bubble there and they had all wrestled and trained together, the stuff they were busting out when they came stateside was just incredible. I mean, this is the first time anybody would have seen that turnbuckle brainbuster that Generico did. Kevin Steen, Kevin Owens had a number of moves where he would take these guys and throw them around like rag dolls. You got like the Steenalizer, and they are the group of wrestlers. I'm not going to say they're the first that did it, but they are clearly the group that popularized doing moves on the ring apron.
Yes, they did.
Which sounds like a terrible idea, right?
It is, right? It's kind of
no, man, I'm not if the situation calls for it, I'm all for it. But it's just super dangerous, especially not all wrestling rings are created equal.
That's right.
So yeah, sometimes you're on there and between the canvas and the ring skirt, you've got no footing. So it is literally, I'm not going to say it's the hardest part of the ring. That's the most cliched thing you can say, but it is unpredictable, man. You can get over there. Some rings have a nice flat surface where you can do something that looks a little more dangerous, but it really isn't. But in these situations, these kids are doing DVDs and brain busters and power bombs all on the ring apron. And being an East Coast indie guy at that time, it was a little intimidating because you're like, oh my God, that's got to kill, right? Anyway. IWS, I got to work a handful of shows for them up in Montreal. I rode with the Smart Mark video crew from Eastern Pennsylvania, and my first match was against Beef Wellington. And then yep. This is the blonde-haired, cow print pant-wearing Beef Wellington.
I know him well.
Yeah, just a very funny guy, interesting guy. When we would talk about his wrestling back then, we'd say, man, comedy and head drops, because he would be setting up for his ass punch spot where he'd jump off the top rope and punch you in the ass. But then he would take somebody and just drop them in some kind of a disgusting pile driver variation. You're like, man, do those things go together? I'm not really sure. The second time I went up to Montreal was just a couple weeks later. I wrestled a guy named the Green Phantom at this venue called the Medley. The crowd was electric. This was awesome. But a funny story that I have about wrestling the Green Phantom, I told this story on the Kevin Steen show, Kevin's interviews that he had on the High Spots Network. And it's one that people bring up to me quite a bit. So I will regale. The Green Phantom was coming back from some sort of a broken arm, broken elbow, broken shoulder, some sort of an arm injury, and he hadn't been wrestling for a while because he needed to get healthy. So he is back. This crowd is massive, and he's jacked up. He's jazzed. He wants to go. We are in a table match, I believe. There's some sort of a hardcore element to this match, and I'm just like, I have no angle with this guy. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. We're putting this match together, and the Green Phantom wants to do this move, which is essentially a mid-2000s independent wrestling move called the Storm Cradle Driver, right? And if you can picture this with me, you've got a guy with a waist lock, right? You reach your hand behind his head for a half Nelson, and you hike this person directly up, right? So that their feet are dangling off the mat. And then with that half Nelson hand, you're going to tuck their head forward, folding them completely in half and sitting down and driving them. And the thing that makes this tough is your legs are here. So your legs are hooked by the arms. So there is nowhere to go. And this was a move popularized by Quiet Storm. One of the guys that came up with the SATs, the Amazing Red. And, now he's massive. He lives in Japan. He works full-time over there as a pro wrestler. But he was a little bit smaller back then. So he would take the Amazing Red and hit him with this Storm Cradle Driver. And it's a scary move. You don't have your back to take any of that bump. It's just all head and neck, maybe a little bit of your shoulders. It's tough. So he suggested it, and we're like, oh, maybe this, maybe that, whatever. He suggested it again, and then I just had to tell him, I'm like, hey, I think I might be a little bit big for that move. And I should not have said that because he goes, "Oh, no, no." And he scoops behind me and he lifts me up. We're like out by the ring. And I'm like, dude, okay. One, you're lifting me without my permission. Come on. But two, I'm like, come on, and then we weren't on first. So we had, a couple hours to talk about this. And we had the whole match put together except for this move. And I just got to a point where now I'm just kind of getting annoyed because I'm just like, dude, I'm not comfortable taking this move. I've never taken it from anyone. I've never wrestled you before. I would just prefer we not do it. Let's just do something else. He had sent people over to me asking if I would take the move, like we're in elementary school or something. Like you pass a note, will you take this move? Circle yes or no. And then one last time, he's like, man, he's like, it's safe. You'll be fine. And maybe I was a little agitated in my response, but I was just like, no, man, I don't want to do it. And he just looks at me with the most sincere look in his eyes. And he goes, but it's my favorite move.
Oh,
he was jacked up. He was excited to have his match and he wanted to come back and do his favorite move. The match was fine. He's a bit of a wild card out there, but nothing dangerous. But it's just one of those peculiar things because there's so much that happens behind the curtain that the fans aren't privy to.
Right.
There's sometimes you put together a match with someone and everything goes awesome in the back, and then you go out and you have a stinker, and then there's sometimes you're putting a match together and you got a little animosity with each other and you guys just aren't having a good day, and you go out there and you have a classic. So it's hard to tell, what went on before that match. And that's just a funny one that I always remember. Now, speaking of Canada, the country, I think more of working for this group in Ontario called UWA Hardcore, where a bunch of us Chikara guys would go up there and do these shows, and God, they were awesome. They were really cool, state-of-the-art shows at that time. Awesome crowds. I worked for a group called Smash up there in my last indie run, and they had some awesome fans. I had some good matches with guys like AJ Styles, Lance Storm, and that's what I think of when I think of Canada, because when I did those shows for IWS, I was in Montreal, but I did not get to really see much. It was just drive up, do the show, drive back. And, I don't want to say it's a regret, but I definitely, when I get back there, I'm going to take an extra day to look around because I've heard so many good things and I'd love to have a better experience of the actual province.
let's talk about more modern stuff. Kyle wants to know, in order to save wrestling, what match would you make a requirement for all of today's talent, and more importantly, up and coming talent watch? Is there a match in particular that you think anyone aspiring to be in the business should study?
I would have to put a little more thought into it to choose just one match. But what I often go ahead, 3 or 4.
Like 3 or 4, just off the top of your head. Not saying this is the definitive one, but ones you would strongly recommend.
Yeah, so it's tough because wrestling matches on their face, just a plain match, watching it with no lead up or whatever, you can only have a certain experience from that. But if you understand the context of the whole situation, what led up to the match, what territory they're in, what kind of audience they have, what kind of history these two guys have, is it their first match together or have they wrestled 100 times? There are so many things that add layers to that experience. If I am suggesting all-time matches to watch, I would say I would probably start with a Flair Steamboat match, just so that you kind of understand the vibe of what they were going for. Not any one in particular, probably one of that trio of matches from '89. I would recommend you watch Halloween Havoc 97, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio. That they just clicked that night. Just all time, they were all time great opponents for each other. That's a great one to watch. And then I would pick a Misawa Kawada match from All Japan in the mid to late 90s, just so that you can see the different style, their execution, and the connection with the crowd. They're three very different matches, but they're all three very excellent matches for different reasons. When talent come to me, and God, that's always such a tricky thing. If you have a more of a relationship with someone and you know their tastes more, it's much easier to recommend matches. So if I've been working with a talent for a couple months, I already know what I've shown them, what they've watched, what we've had discussions about, and I can make a recommendation based on that. But without any knowledge, it's really tricky. So what I try to tell people is not to overwhelm yourself, but watch everything, right? I don't mean watch everything all day. I mean, pick a night and watch a couple matches from Nitro. Pick a night and watch a couple matches from early 90s WWF. You know, the next night, watch some stuff from the 1970s, whether it's, you know, Texas wrestling or Mid-Atlantic or Florida. Take a night and watch various Japanese stuff. God, it's so helpful to have the access to so many things. Just with, you type in a word, you click it, and it's there. You know, I used to have boxes, and I still have them somewhere, but you'd have boxes and boxes of tapes, and you'd have to have them queued up perfectly, throw them in the rewinder. God damn, this one doesn't have a match listing. What? It's a 6-hour tape. Where's the match? It's just a funny plight when I think back to that. But don't do yourself the disservice of only watching what's on TV now, or only watching old Raw and Nitro matches. Gosh, there's just so much to watch. And like I said, don't overwhelm yourself. Don't spend hours and hours watching this. But if you hear a name you're not super familiar with, click through YouTube and watch 2 matches, right? Yeah. Click through the network and watch 2 matches. And then start to curate your own playlist. I like this guy, so I'm going to, make note of, I'm not super familiar with him, but I'm going to make note of his name going forward. I put together a YouTube playlist. If anybody is interested in seeing this, I'll send you the link. But I particularly love the World of Sport era of wrestling in the 60s, 70s, 80s in England. And I had just seen so much. We've talked about this on previous episodes of my fascination with Johnny Saint and the like. But there is just so much footage out there that you basically come upon the same 6, 7, 8 guys in different combinations. And I wanted to find hidden gems of the old European British wrestling scene. And so there were guys that I may not be super familiar with, but I would watch a couple of their matches and be like, oh my gosh, this guy's special. So I would put him on a playlist called The Wrestling. So we have matches with Johnny Saint, but his opponents are not his conventional opponents. Maybe it's someone he only wrestled once or twice. You would have guys like Tibor and Peter Zakash, right? These just great technique guys. Burt Royal, a guy that looks older. I mean, he would fit right in 1972 Mid-Atlantic or whatever. But in these matches, you would not expect much. It was just awesome wrestlers. So I put together a playlist like that I have friends that like that style of wrestling that aren't super familiar with the breadth of that era. So if anybody's interested in that playlist, I'll post it on Twitter.
Let's do it. Let's plan on that for sure. Let's do an interesting one here from Chandler. What were your thoughts on wrestling at Insane Championship Wrestling in Newcastle, and how did that deal come about?
ICW. The first time I really got an understanding of what that company was, and they had a documentary that followed around Grado, and I had heard the name. I was familiar with some of the roster, but I didn't quite understand the story behind the company. So I saw that documentary and was like, oh man, that's pretty interesting, pretty fascinating. And I never worked for them while I was on the independents, but when I came back to NXT, every now and again, I would get a message from the office saying, hey, we've got this group wants to book you on this date. Are you interested? We'll pay to get you over there. We'll pay to put you up, etc. Are you interested? Or what would usually, that's what happened in the case with ICW, but with other companies, maybe Evolve or whatever, the company would reach out, Evolve or Progress. They'd reach out to me directly, ask me if I was interested, and then they would go through the office to book me. But yeah, I finally worked for ICW, and that was when I came over for NXT as a wrestler for NXT, and just what a fun crowd, what an awesome experience. It's in Scotland, so you need like one of those translator earbuds they have in these futuristic movies where you put it in your ear and you can understand what everyone's saying because they're speaking a foreign language. Scottish, I believe, is the accent that I have the hardest with, because sometimes they will just get on a tear and you're like, I got like 2.5 words of that. I don't know if you're angry or very happy. But just, yeah, good atmosphere. I'm glad I got to check that off the list and work for them at that time.
Let's talk about death matches. It's been a topic of conversation a lot in the last month. The WMD himself says, can you share some insane memories of any death matches you've watched or been involved in during your time on the independents? So not necessarily one you saw on tape, but maybe ones you were there in the building for.
Conrad, did you know that Chris Hero wrestled in a King of the Death matches?
No. Which one?
2001, I wrestled in IWA Mid-South's King of the Death matches. I wrestled Corporal Robinson in the first round. It was a thumbtack match, so the ring was covered with thousands of thumbtacks, and I like extra padded up. I had like the Ahmed Johnson going on where I have like a a pad on my tricep, a pad on my elbow. And it was okay. Not really my flavor. Gosh, I went back and watched that match a couple years ago and I just was super embarrassed. I mean, that's, 20 years ago now that I had that match. So I'm like, just the way that I look and the way that I'm acting. Oh man, a little cringy for me, but I believe for that experience, the worst part about it was taking my boots and getting a pair of scissors after the match and just plucking out the hundreds and hundreds of thumbtacks that were stuck in my boots. Because you can't just pull them out easily. It's not that simple, but you got to sit there for about 45 minutes and pull these things out. The match. So what I'm saying is the match itself was not as bad as I expected or anticipated. That was the only actual death match I've done. I've bled in a bunch of different matches. I've had a ton of tables and ladders matches, but that is the singular death match. But having wrestled for IWA Mid-South during that era, I saw some hellacious matches. I saw some crazy stipulations. I saw a leech get stapled to someone's forehead and the damn leech is just kind of writhing about. And I'm like, oh man, that poor leech. I saw a number of barefoot thumbtack matches, which, oh my God, I don't know. You just step on something around the house and it's like you're man down.
Yeah,
you catch your toe on the corner of the coffee table and you just want to call it quits, right? But these guys, Pondo and Ian, I've seen a couple other people do these thumbtack or the barefoot thumbtack matches, but it's not just the thumbtacks. It's, let me break a light tube and hold your foot and slice the underside of your foot. Oh my God, rough. I've seen fire go wrong, which is very scary when someone hits the fire and then when they roll off, the fluid follows them and it sticks on their back or whatever it is. Now, it's, I do not envy those that do those types of matches and have to figure out the way that looks the safest, that looks the most dangerous, but can be done in the safest way possible. it can be done, and it's a great illusion when you do. But sometimes it can go horribly wrong. There's that clip of Shadow WX from Big Japan. I think he's maybe wrestling Mike Samples. He sets himself on fire, jumps off the top rope to put the guy through the table, and then he just dives out of the ring and is crawling through the crowd on fire. And it's like something out of a Faces of Death video. The worst part I would say though is the aftermath, when the match is over, when the show is over, and you got these guys, gluing and taping themselves back up, or trying to find out which hospital they're going to go to, or how they're going to handle whatever it is, because light tubes don't know how to work, man. They are untrained, so they break in interesting ways. You've seen
sure. Light tubes don't know how to work, man.
You like that?
That's great. It feels like a Lebowski line.
Yeah. Ladders don't know how to work, man. They don't like to cooperate. They're doing their own damn thing. But something as simple as a light tube shot, I say simple just because I've seen thousands of them over the years. But you don't take into consideration, there's not a break point on that light tube. You have to really whack somebody with it, and you have to hit them with the right spot of the tube, and tube by tube that changes up. So what you run the risk of, I'm going to take this tube and I'm going to crush you with it. It can also break at your hand, right? It can cut into your, cut in here and sever some arteries. I've seen people have their hands, have to be put back together because they swung a light tube too hard or at the wrong spot. It's very dangerous. Kudos to those, like I said, that can do it in an impressive yet safe way. But there's so much that goes into it, and so much that can happen from it, that it's tough, man. I've seen my fair share, and some of them are fun spectacles to witness at the time. But like I said, the aftermath of guys getting patched up or having to call 911, that's not the fun part.
I'd like to see our producer Stan in a death match one day. I think that would be fun, at least for me.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of a death match are you thinking?
Just like him versus, I think Insane Lane is back now. Maybe we could do him and Insane Lane in a no rope barbed wire. You got to have like a wiffle ball bat with thumbtacks all over it. I think that would I think that's a go-to.
Dude, I tell you, this brings a scary moment to my mind. There was a show, again, I think this is in 2001. Smart Mark Video was not there to record it, but they did have a hard cam set up. And I believe the show was called The Night the Lights Went Out in Charlestown. And the match was Bull Payne, at that time, the scariest veteran that I had ever shared a locker room with.
A tremendous promo. He knew how to go out of your way to see his stuff if you've never seen it.
Don't watch his WCW stuff, because that is not indicative of who he is as a wrestler and a performer. No. I eventually won Bull over, but for a while he did not like me at all, and I wrestled him a lot, and I would think I was just about to die. Bull was wrestling the newly relocated to the Midwest area Necro Butcher. He had just moved up from Texas, and there were some things in the match that, Necro's this new young hardcore guy on the scene, and Bull's the vet, and Bull was upset with a couple things here and there, and Necro had jumped off the apron with one of those thumbtack bats, and I think he kind of dinked him with it. Like, he didn't really hammer him with it. And then Bull was just like, if you're going to hit me, and just started laying into him. Bull brought to the ring with him an aluminum baseball bat.
Oh, okay.
And brother, he would find a meaty part of your body and he would lay that sucker in, whether it's the back of your thigh, the back of your calf, your belly, he would cup the end of it with his hands and smack you in the side of the face with it. And that thing was coming, he wanted people to believe in him. He never did anything that would injure you and take you out for a while, but you felt it, right? So he's a little upset with Necro at this time. And then he just takes over and just starts violating him. Necro's on all fours at one point, and this is the fans bring the weapons era. So they just always had things with them, even regardless if that was the stipulation of the match or not. You could just look out into the crowd and go, oh, that thing looks fun. I'm going to use that. He had I believe this one was a wooden baseball bat, but it had a cluster of barbed wire up at the top.
Of course.
And Bull swung this thing like Tiger Woods and came up under and hit Necro in the face with this. And we're watching from the monitor, like going, oh my God, oh. And at some point, Bull gets Necro back in the ring, and Necro is staggered. And Necro at this point is just kind of listening and following along because he knows that, Bull's upset about whatever. Bull grabs his aluminum bat and he goes, "Give me your head."
Oh no.
And he takes this aluminum bat and swings it and just releases at the right moment for this bat to hit Necro square in the forehead, right between the eyes. And the bat even kind of just like goes boom and then falls down. We were losing our shit. The finish of this match, if I remember correctly, he had procured Bull Payne had procured a third of a table from under the ring. Like when all the debris and all the stuff happens and it gets shoved under the ring. He reached under the ring and pulled out like not a corner of a table, but a little bit more than that. And he threw this into the ring, right? So he has this propped up on the bottom turnbuckle, right? The corner turnbuckle, and he DDTs Necro through this. And now Necro is just like laying there with like, his arm under the rope, his leg is over the rope, and Bull covers him. And the ref is like, hey, Bull, he's in the ropes. He's in the ropes. And Bull just looks at him. He goes, "Count it, motherfucker." So the ref goes, "Okay, 1, 2, 3. So I had never quite seen a finish like that before. And the fear was that Bull was going to lay into Necro after the match. This is what Ian was worried about. Ian was like, "Oh man, if Bull's still pissed, he might try to beat him up a little bit more, whatever." Not that he was beating him up, but you get the point.
Yeah.
So Ian's idea was to calm Bull down. Let's send some people from the locker room to run in and distract him, get his attention away or whatever. And sure enough, "Hero, get out there." I've just seen Bull Payne damn near kill a man, and I'm being sent on a rescue mission. And, there were like 3 or 4 of us that went out. And I just remember not even getting in the ring. I hopped up on the apron and I was like, hey, Bull. "Hey man, hey, whatever." And he hit me in the stomach with the bat, and that was that. But it's just, what a terrifying thing. I'm 21 years old and I'm being sent to my certain death. God, those shows, I need to go back and watch some of those because they always had such chaotic energy.
Yeah.
Whether there were 15 people in the crowd, 150 in the crowd, there was just always something going on. The array of talent that came through there was incredible. I had moved there. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and then late 2001, I moved to Louisville. And, after a couple months, I ended up getting my own place in Clarksville, Indiana. And I was on these shows every Wednesday and Saturday when IWA would run weekly and when they would have a building at that time. And I just got to experience just so many peculiar situations that I would not have otherwise experienced, and just had a lot of fun matches and a lot of connections with people that I'm still friends with to this day. So it's just a great time. We'll have to go back and revisit a lot of that stuff because it's a lot of fond memories and a lot of crazy stuff that I forgot even happened.
It's really pretty unbelievable. I can't wait for us to talk more about death matches in the future. Let's talk about Doug Saylor's question. He says, Brody King tweeted that he would like to wrestle you. Do you think that would be a good match? And do you think you can take him?
Oh, of course I can take him, man. He's big and bad and strong, but I got the experience, and I also happen to be big, bad, and strong. I have been familiar with Brody since he was training. He used to come out to the PWG shows, and through the music industry, we had a lot of acquaintances, people that he was friends with before he even thought about wrestling. And he just always came across to me as a good dude. I'm happy to see that he's been pretty successful in the last couple of years. He did a seminar that I did out in Los Angeles at the Santino Brothers School. And I think he had some sort of an injury he was rehabbing from at that time. So I did not get in the ring with him, but yeah, he's somebody that I would certainly love to have a match with at some point. A match with, maybe I'm better off teaming with this guy. But yeah, I'm very interested to pop my head back into the independent scene and see how some of these guys are.
Here's one that I know you're going to get on your soapbox for, but I think it's an important conversation because I think sometimes fans online maybe don't have the right approach to wrestling. Lewis says, tell me if it was hard to take training from someone at the Performance Center if they did not have credibility. I know the best wrestlers don't make the best coaches, but come on, guys like Norman Smiley or Joey Mercury, was it hard to wholeheartedly listen to these guys? I know what my response would be to that, and I'm not even somebody who's ever been there or taken a bump or done anything in wrestling, but I can't wait to hear your take.
What was this gentleman's name, Conrad?
Lewis,
I admire the thought and the effort, but you could not have picked two worse names. Because Mercury is a guy I first started working with in Ring of Honor in like 2010. He came in for a little while and he just kind of had a different approach, a different mentality. And he was not a bitter, grizzled old vet at that time and could take what we were doing and put it through a different lens, applying things that he had learned from working with Eddie Guerrero and such. And he really became a great mind for pro wrestling. He's a guy that broke in his teens, 15, 16, he was having matches, and he was a part of that whole Omega crew. If you're familiar with that at all, that's, the Hardys, Shane Helms, Shannon Moore, Steve Carino even kicked around back then a little bit. Champagne, Mike Maverick, I think, is a guy like those Omega shows were really cool things to get on tape at that time and see the stuff that the TLC match Hardy Boys had been doing in the 5 years prior. So Mercury was in the mix with that, him and his partner, Christian York. And then they had also just traveled up and down the East Coast independents and worked a lot with just, every tag team you could imagine back then. So he's a guy that brought a great wealth of knowledge at that time. And again, I cannot put over Norman Smiley enough. His career trajectory is unlike anybody's that I can think of in the history of pro wrestling. He's a guy that was into bodybuilding. So he started training and did job matches in the Florida Championship Wrestling era. He took that and ended up going over to Japan to have worked shoot fights. He's a guy that's, getting squashed by, I don't know, the big steel man or something. And now he's on a plane to Japan and he's in the ring with Masakatsu Funaki. And then he takes that and comes back to the States. This is also a guy that grew up watching World of Sport back in England when he was a kid. So he always had that interest in his head. He came back to the States. He ends up in the Pat O'Connor Memorial Cup, teaming with Chris Adams, wrestling Conan and Rey Mysterio Sr. That earns him a spot working full-time in Mexico for years. And then that earns him a spot in WCW, where he, of all things, gets over as an outlandish comedy character. And then he parlays that into becoming, part of the first team of coaches at Florida Championship Wrestling and has been training developmental talent since. What an array of talent and just all these experiences that he can convey to people. And just through it all, just such a genuinely nice guy. It's easy to have good rapport with him. He's got a good sense of humor. and he's, he feels fortunate to have his job and have done what he has done in wrestling. God, he is, one of the most valuable people I have ever spent time working with and learning from. He's just he's a great guy on top of it all. Even if he was an asshole, he would still have tons of knowledge to hand over. So that doesn't really answer your question. That just tells you that your picks could have been a little more researched. I have spent time being told what to do by people whose opinion in wrestling I did not particularly care for. I have also had people that I thought the world of give me advice that turned out to not be good advice in wrestling. So there is no exact blueprint on who to listen to, when to listen to them, and why. You just have to go on your own personal experience. And I think you should never shut yourself off from any type of critique, because you can always do better. You can always be smarter. You can always learn more. And sometimes that comes from the most unlikely source. I remember when Perry Saturn would come to Tampa and then later the Performance Center as a guest coach, right? Anybody that knows Saturn or is familiar with his career, you have a certain image of him or opinion of him. And I just remember hearing Perry say a couple things and being like, wow, that was really smart. That was, wow, I did not expect that. And these little nuggets of info can come from, just like I said, the most unlikely source. So in these situations, you should never turn yourself off from the criticism. You should just sit back and develop what I like to call a filter. Because when you have a match, right, there are a half dozen opinions out there, right? You have the opinion of the guy you just wrestled. You have the opinion of, the booker / promoter. You have the opinion of your producer of the match, if there is one. You have the opinion of the boys in the back, right? You have the opinion of whoever broke you into wrestling. And, if you have like a mentor-mentee relationship with them. You have the opinion of the live audience, right? And then you also have the opinion of the not live audience, the people that either watch this on streaming or they watched it on YouTube or however they managed to see this match, they're also going to have an opinion. Holy shit, that is just off the top of my head. That's just 7 opinions, right?
Right. Right.
That doesn't even take into account your peers whom you have developed relationships with that look out for you and give you advice. So people, there are some people like that I have that, will reach out to me and ask me what I thought, right? That's just another thing of feedback. So it's impossible and overwhelming to factor in all these opinions at once. You will lose your shit. You will go crazy. You will stop enjoying the thing that you love if you try to do all that. It's not possible. So you have to create a filter. So that filter to you, it can be whose opinion is the most valuable to you, right? Well, it's probably the boss, probably the head guy in charge, right? Because you want to make him happy and you want him to continue to have faith in you and to give you more opportunities. So you need to value that person's opinion, right? Then also it's very important to be on the same page with whoever you're having the match with, right? Yeah. You want to develop a relationship with that person so that they enjoy having matches with you. Man, I've had some experiences over the years where it's like, are we are we working together or are we working against each other? The match is over and next thing you know, you don't see your opponent again for the rest of the night. He didn't ask how you were. He didn't, what, it's just, I don't know, man. That's not how teammates treat each other and work with each other, right? So it is important to have the trust and respect of the person you're sharing the ring with, right? And there are just certain people whose opinions you should put on a higher pedestal than others, right? So you don't know who's who until you start getting some experience and you start making mental notes of these. And you also have to value your own opinion. Once you've put in some years, once you've had a little bit of success, you can take a step back and give yourself a little credit. Yeah. And just, man, if everybody hated the match, right? Everybody thinks it sucked, right? Are you at least happy with it? Right? Did you at least have fun and enjoy yourself and feel proud for going to bat for the thing that you believed in? Right? It's, at the end of the day, it's not all that serious. It's batting average, right? You're going to strike out, you're going to pop a fly, right? Sometimes you're going to hit a grand slam, right? How many other baseball references? Sometimes you're going to ground out. Sometimes you got a bunt.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's an analogy and it works. You just want to have a high batting average. You just want to knock it out of the park more often than not. And you never know whose opinion is going to help push you to that next level. It's chemistry, man. It's putting this element and then this element and then this one at the end. It's a completely different product. And it's fun to figure that out. It is, there's no blueprint to it. So, Lewis, I believe his name was.
Yep.
I understand your sentiment. It is easy to get bitter when someone is telling you how to wrestle and you're like, oh, I've seen your matches, dude. You're like, listen, you're being very harsh at me right now, and I have seen your best work. So it's easy to think that in your head and be spiteful, but if there is any chance that this person can convey one nugget of knowledge that will help me be a better performer and more successful, give it to me.
Let's talk a little bit about what you just said there, because you made the reference. Dude, I've seen your matches, dude. And the idea being, I don't know that I really want to listen to that critique. And I understand sort of maybe the place where Louis was coming from. And I think you do too, but we both know that Norman Smiley and Joey Mercury are fucking unbelievable wrestling minds. Just because they didn't main event a WrestleMania doesn't mean they have, they don't have significant value or can't be helpful or blah, blah, blah. But I guess what I wanted to drill down on too is some of the times the advice that you might be getting, it might be filtered through the company they're working for. Meaning, we've heard a lot of folks say over the years that NXT used to work hard to quote unquote break bad habits of guys that they learned on the indies. Now, that doesn't mean that there is necessarily a right way and a wrong way to do wrestling. Wrestling is art, and you should do it the way you want and you enjoy. However, if you want to do well in this particular company, well, we like to see things done like X, Y, or Z. That's no different than if you were working, at a dealership selling cars, or you're working in a factory, or you're painting houses, or whatever your skill is, and you go apply that for a different employer. They may have their own way of doing things, and that doesn't mean that their way is wrong or right. It's just their way. And some of the guys who are in that WWE system, they know what Vince is looking for. They know what the quote unquote office is looking for. And when they're telling you do X, Y, and Z, it's not necessarily that you're doing it the wrong way. You're just not doing it the WWE way. Is that fair to say?
And they don't want to get chewed out on headset when they're like, why the hell is he doing that? Didn't you tell him?
Right. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. Hey,
let me add one little bit to that.
Yeah.
Perfect example of this is, somebody is watching a match, somebody in charge is watching a match, and he makes an observation. wow, why didn't he hook the leg on that pin? That looked like shit. Why didn't he hook the leg? So then that gets passed on, like, okay, tell him to hook the leg, tell him to hook the leg, right?
Right.
And then that gets passed down to more people, like, you got to hook the leg, you got to hook the leg. So now there are people that are learning pro wrestling for the first time, and all they know is, oh, you got to hook the leg. That's what you have to do, right? There's no context there. You just have to hook the leg.
Right.
So I see these people covering for a pin on someone's shoulders, and then in the process of going to hook the leg, they're taking their weight from the shoulders and putting it on the person's stomach so that they can hook the leg, when the whole point of hooking the damn leg is to put more leverage on their shoulders that makes it harder to kick out. So there are some situations where if I'm being desperate and I want to pin this guy, I don't have time to hook the fucking leg. And if I take that extra second to go and hook the leg, I may lose my window right there. Right. So that's nuance. And some people don't have time for nuance when there are, I don't want to see yes men. I don't want to say yes men, but people that do not wish to challenge the authority and make sense of it. You just lose your credibility with me because there is no, oh, you have to hook the leg. That's something you can say on commentary. Well, if he would have had the leg hooked, he might have had a better chance of getting the pin. But anybody that knows that, dude, if I put all my weight across your face, shoulders, I pin both of your arms down.
Yeah,
man, it's going to be hard to get up from that. Right.
Yeah, of course.
I don't necessarily need to hook your leg, but what's happening is it's getting lost in translation from the top all the way down to the bottom. And I consider myself a bit of an artist, a free spirit. I don't like doing things just because that's what they want. Right. I will do it if it makes sense. Right. If I do an independent investigation on my own and I come to the conclusion that yes, this is the right thing to do. But that's when you just become a soldier. Okay. They told me to do this. I'm not going to question. I'm just going to do it. Right. And you have to have built up enough personal equity that you can get away with that. Right. So that even though you're not listening 100 out of 100 times, they know you deliver, they know whatever. So it's not a problem. But if, this goes back to my first time in developmental, maybe there's a situation where they are already I'm already losing favor, so that when I am making these decisions on my own, that maybe is not the best thing for my career, because what I am doing is helping me continue to lose favor for what? Just so that I can feel justified or validated when I choose to do something because I think it's the right thing to do. I'm just getting a little watered down here, but it's an exchange. You want to be critically successful, commercially successful, critically acclaimed and commercially successful at the same time. And it's not always possible to do both.
Yeah, tough to do. Let's do a few more here and then we'll wrap things up. Johnny wants to know, I'd love to hear some stories from his time in the Pro Wrestling Noah dojo. I'm sure you've got tons of stories. Can you hit us with one in particular? Because we've got a lot of listeners here who are obviously a big fan of all things Japan, and Noah was a big deal for a long, long time.
To give a little backstory here, which, I can't just simply answer a question, Conrad. I gotta stretch this sucker out. I only want to be long-winded when it makes the experience better. So sure. I will continue to work on that as we go on. To set the table.
Nobody's complaining, brother. We love
I did my first tour for Pro Wrestling Noah in 2007. They originally wanted myself and Claudio, but Claudio had to say no, had to decline, because at that time he was headed into WWE the first time, which, as we know, didn't materialize. So I ended up going to Japan on my own, 2007, one tour, and they would do 12 tours a year. Oh. And I did not get brought back. I did okay, but I guess I did not do anything that made me stand out enough for them to go, oh, let's really bring this guy back. So comes time to this 1 year later, pretty much 1 year later, they, Claudio's back on the Indies and they booked both of us for a tag tour. So in 2008, Claudio and I went over as a team. Again, must not have done anything to catch anybody's eyes, because the rest of 2008, I got no more tours. And it came time, the end of the year, they had asked about, bringing us back over in the following year. And I told the office, I said, hey, listen, I would love to get a little bit more out of my experience. So after the tour, would it be possible for me to stay in the dojo, in between tours, to just kind of get a better experience of Japan? I can train in the dojo. I can learn Japanese. I can, just get more of that experience. And they were pretty shocked by that. They were like, really? You want to stay in the dojo? And I was like, yeah, of course. I would love to have that experience. So we did that first tour, and the tour finished, and now I'm off to Ariake, Japan, which is Tokyo Bay area. And I am, I've got a little cot. They had a couple days off at the end of the tour since the tour was over, but then it's like you're up at 7 a.m., you're cleaning the dojo, you're preparing breakfast, and you're going up and you're training for a couple hours. You're doing in-ring training, you're doing weightlifting, then you go back down, you make your chanko, which is your sumo stew, and then you kind of have the rest of the day to yourself. But, in 2009, I ended up doing 2 different dojo stays. And between my tours and the time that I was over there, I spent 3 months in Japan that year, which was incredible. It was an awesome experience. I got to learn more about just being there and living there. But then I also got to really study the language. And, I'm absolutely not fluent, but I have a hell of a vocabulary. I know a shitload of words. I can read and write katakana and hiragana, which are the 2 smaller alphabets. When it gets into kanji, no. There are thousands of kanji characters, and I know maybe about a dozen. But that was because I was over there full time, and I could spend time studying and practicing and spending time with my friends and asking them questions. And it was an invaluable experience to get to go over there, stay there, live there, experience more of the culture, and just really fully immerse myself in Japanese wrestling. I'm very thankful that I was able to do that. As far as actual stories, it is very different the way they teach wrestling and the way they break people into wrestling over there. And some of it is, I would say a lot of it is for the better over there. Just the discipline that they have, and there's just a certain layer of respect that exists in Japan without question. It is just not even, it, comes from their schooling, it comes from their parents, whatever it is, that is just, unquestioned respect that you don't always get over here, because our country puts such an emphasis on personal freedom and individualism that you do have a number of wonderful students over here. But again, this goes back to what I was talking about in the last question. It's just your own personal liberty to choose whether you want to do it this way because you think it's the best way, or you're just going to do this because that's the way to do it. So getting to see that training firsthand, a lot of it came from the sumo culture. And I'll just explain this little bit and then we can move on. But something that I found very fascinating is once the Japanese trainees or the Japanese dojo trainees have spent, I don't know, maybe about 6 months or so training, right? So that means everything. That means weight training, in-ring training, maintaining the dojo, keeping everything clean, whatever duties that are necessary during shows, setting up and tearing down the ring. A lot of the referees do that as well. Maintaining, being security at shows, They just have a lot of responsibilities, right? Once someone has been around for a little while and they have the understanding that, hey, this person's going to stick it out, because man, it is hard training and a lot of people quit. I would encourage you to bust out the Gaia Girls documentary that came out in the early 2000s, and just to get an understanding of what dojo life can be like. It's a bit embellished for the documentary crew, but you get an understanding of it, right? So it's, once you know that someone is going to stick it out, or that you feel someone is going to stick it out, they have this system called tsukibito, and that translates to attendant. So one of the top guys in the company will basically adopt one of the young boys, right? And when I say top guys, when I was there in Noah, it was Misawa, Kobashi, Taue, and Akiyama. And they would select, they would have their pick of, okay, I'm going to take this one. I don't know if it's like an NBA draft. If you're sitting there with your notes and picking, you give the guy a green hat or a red hat. But you pick one of these guys, and now he is like, he's not like your servant, but he's your attendant, right? So this young boy is going to make sure all your gear is washed. He's going to carry your bags. Any little things that you need done, he is, he's your guy, right? Now, in exchange, you take this person under your wing, right? When you go out to dinner, you pay for everything because you're the star and he's the young boy. You just bit by bit kind of teach them about wrestling, but it's a more personal approach, right? You are going to the gym when this guy goes to the gym, not because you need to work out, but because he needs a spot. He needs a towel, he needs his water or whatever. So you're just basically there to absorb everything from this guy. And if you look historically, guys that were attendants of Giant Baba, were Jumbo Saruta, Mitsuharu Misawa, right? So in the eyes of the fans, after a while, they basically understand like, oh, this guy is affiliated with this person. So you get that rub from them. When I was in the dojo, we had a guy named Aoki, and he was one of Akiyama's guys. Some of the top guys I know at the time were Kotaro Suzuki, Marufuji, and those two were Misawa guys. And you could kind of see it in their style of wrestling. Every now and again, they'll add something in a match to pay homage to whoever, their, gosh, I don't know the right word for it. I just know that Tsukibito means attendant, whoever their guy is, their coach. So it was very fascinating to see this system. And it's kind of like the Japanese pro wrestling version of Big Brother, where Big Brother, Big Sisters, right? You just take this ball of clay, and then you kind of just start to mold it over time, and you build this relationship, and you do everything that they need, anything that they need help with. You take their ring jacket and you go get it dry cleaned. Right. You, anything they might need, you go hail a cab for them if they need a cab. But in turn, you get the experience of learning directly from these top stars. And the lineage is just really incredible when you look at it. You look at Kenta Kobashi, and one of his attendants was Go Shiozaki, who just had an exceptional year and a half for Pro Wrestling Noah. He's a guy that I think the world of as a talent and as a person. But you can see a little bit of that essence, a little bit of that energy from Kobashi was passed down to Shiozaki. And I don't know if that's through osmosis. I don't know if it is 100% intentional, but it is just something about the culture of Japanese pro wrestling that I find so fascinating, and I didn't fully understand until I was over there in the dojo myself.
Man, I can't wait to talk about that a little more. We're getting to the end of the show. I do want to do one more question before you drop some words of wisdom, and then we get to our song of the week. Conrad from Huntsville wants to know, Chris, what's your favorite Patriot match?
I'm actually more a fan of the Dark Patriot, Doug Gilbert. I like him a little bit more.
Well, there we go. Well, let's drop some words of wisdom this week. What can you help us with this week, Chris?
I would encourage the talent out there to build your relationship with your referee, right? I think some referees are not quite, I don't want to say respected, but they're just not treated the same as the talent, and they are not the in-ring wrestling talent, but they are very important to the whole experience, right? So I consider my referee to be a teammate in there when I'm having a match. So when you're working with a referee for the first time, I mean, you don't want to be overwhelming and tell them every little thing that you're doing, but just be conscientious of what they need to know. What you plan to do in your match is like a broad stroke. And there are so many things in matches that can be made easier for the talent with a referee that's on the ball. So you can communicate things to your opponents more easily with a good referee, right? You don't want to sit there and have a conversation with your opponent, but there are referees that can, in discreet ways, convey certain information, certain knowledge, whatever. A referee also gets in the ring before you do. So the referee could have knowledge of the state of the ring. Hey brother, there's a hole over here. Watch your foot. Or, oh, the ropes are kind of loose on this area. Or, oh, it's kind of wet over here. Like, they're just, they're part of the team. So whenever you do any type of sequence or some type of finish or whatever that involves the referee, do your best to make the ref look like he has authority, right? Don't bury the ref. That's what you hear all the time, right? But what does that actually mean? Right. Don't make the ref look like a dumbass, right? If the ref looks like a dumbass on his own, that's his fault. Yeah. But for instance, if you're using something cheating to beat the babyface in a match, right? If you make the ref look dumb for a second, the heat for that finish is going to go on the referee.
Yes.
Right. And you don't want that. You're not going to make a comeback on the damn referee, right? He's not the one, he's not the one that's going to be bringing it back in a rematch, right? If I'm a heel, I'm greedy. I want every last drop of heat. So I'm going to make sure that the referee looks vigilant, right? So you can put things in your match to show that the referee does in fact have authority, right? And then it's just, I've worked with so many awesome referees over the years, and they are absolutely underappreciated. But just the experience that I've gotten to have, it is when you are in a high stress situation and you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to perform, or this goes wrong or that goes wrong. When you have a referee in there that you're familiar with, that you have a good relationship with, it just makes everything so much easier, so much more calm. And it's, man, I've had some refs before that, you're just in the zone, you're having your match, right? And boom, you hit this false finish, and then you go down for the pin and the ref is like, dude, that was awesome. Right? It's just this slight bit of encouragement. And you're like, yeah, that was awesome. Hell yeah. Thanks, dude. You don't want to do it in an obnoxious way that anybody can tell or understand what you're doing. But it's just fun to have those little bits of communication. And while I'm talking about this, I mentioned this in a previous podcast. If you do have a good relationship with the referee, they know you, you know them. When there is some sort of a move that looks like it has gone wrong, or something with a high degree of difficulty, or it looks dangerous, when they hop down to check on you, they are able to confirm that you are okay in a more discreet way than just, tapping, giving the Iggy, like whispering in your ear, like that is superfluous, right? anytime there's a dive now, you just look immediately and the cameraman is right. It's like the cameraman is like trying to, all right, let me check their hands. Okay. They gave the Iggy. These guys are okay on the dive. That completely takes me out of it. Right. So when you have someone that you are friendly with that, you know, is one of your guys, they can just come down and check on you. And it's just, the rapport is so much easier, and it does not expose that you are conveying to your referee, yes, that dive did not hurt me. I am okay.
Well, we're okay with you helping us out with the song of the week. We've heard some good ones. I think my favorite one so far is Beanie Siegel, The Truth. What are you recommending this week?
One of my favorite, you know, I'm definitely going to say my my top five. When it goes to hip hop, my elite five are Kanye West, Biggie, Jay-Z, Kendrick Lamar, and you've got this group called Outkast. I absolutely adore Outkast, you know, both their stuff together, their stuff individually. It is really mind-blowing to go back and listen to their early stuff. I don't know if you ever dabbled in this, Conrad, but I used to get CDs from Columbia House and BMG.
Of course.
So I had gotten that first Outkast album, but had not listened to a ton of it. I listened to it a couple times, but you know, you get your favorite songs and maybe listen to only one or two. I had gotten the Goody Mob album the following year, and I just loved it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Goody Mob, they're affiliated with Outkast. Let me go back and check Outkast more. Right. So I will recommend a song from Outkast's first album. It's called Get Up, Get Out. And it does have members of Goody Mob, you know, CeeLo is in the song as well. And it's just it's a bit of a longer song, but it is, they kind of discuss the perils of trying to make something out of your life when it's easier to do, you know, to take shortcuts and do things the wrong way, or, you know, maybe society thinks it's the wrong way. It's not necessarily the wrong way. It depends, you know, obviously everybody has their own situation, but it's just that plight that they're going through. And then when you look back, you know, Andre and Big Boy were 17 and 18 when they were writing these songs and they were making these classics. It is just interesting to look back, you know, with 2021 ears and just listen to these songs. It's incredible. Like, I have so many Outkast songs that I love, but this first one that I'm going to mention here will be Get Up, Get Out.
Well, let's do it. Here it is. Outkast, Get Up, Get Out. And we'll see you next week right here on Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling? We'll find out next week.